All right, hello everybody. Welcome back for another breakdown. This week we are looking at, well, it's a docu-follow commercial, I guess, but it's cars and we're playing, and this is the Ford Bronco, and it's definitely not strictly a car commercial because there's only a little bit of car footage in it, and it sort of almost doesn't match the rest of the stuff. But it's like this docu-follow of this lady climbing, and she's having lots of fun, and presented by Disney, supposedly. So this is the ad. It goes on forever, right? One of those little things. I don't know where you're going to play this, maybe on the website or something. But this is the stuff that we're going to be talking about, which is the anamorphic framing for the interviews and the lighting there. And then we'll talk a little bit about, I think there's another one in here somewhere, this setup, and then a little bit of the workout stuff inside. All the outdoor stuff is pretty cruisy, nothing crazy here. Overcast conditions. Yeah. We're camping. Life is good. Ford Bronco. Yes, please. And let's do Rocky in Russia. What is that? Rocky 4. Yes, training. This lady's going to start chasing chickens here pretty soon. What is she doing? Ooh. Okay, we got some strength. And you get the idea, right? It's man, they really lean into the flares here in this thing too, which is what you do when you go anamorphic. So that's the ad. Now, let's start by looking at the interview because we haven't really done one of these setups before, and these are nicely done, right? This is beautifully lit. Brooke looks great here. It's nice, right? Oops, I just hit resolve live. What happened? There we go, we're back. Where is it? Okay, so here, we're in this barn thing where we're eventually going to be working out, but even here, we're trying to create that depth, right? This is like your framing. You're just gonna set the interview. Where should we put it? What you don't wanna do is plonk Brooke here right up against this flat wall in the back and just shoot straight into it, right? That's no good because everything becomes really flat. Even in a world where you're shooting anamorphic and you're pretty close to wide open here, this is like 2/8 anamorphic style. It's kind of blobby back there, but you still see the lines depending on how close the wall is to someone. Ideally, when you set up these interviews, you want to do it as far away as the space will allow you to create a sense of depth, because you don't want to park somebody just up against the wall, or else that limits what the scene is going to look like and how much depth there's going to be and how many angles you can fit inside the space behind the person is all determined by how far away the person is. So the closer they are, the worse it gets. So if you have space, do yourselves a favor and use it. So pull the person away from the wall. Now, this is a perfect example of upstage lighting, right? This could be, this could be Thor over here with his hair like this, and this could be a Marvel movie. This is the kind of framing and lighting that you would expect from that. So you'll notice, first things first, if we split this lady straight down the middle this way, not this way, this way, you're going to see that we are on the shadow side of the line, which is what this gets us. And then our big key over here is going to be pushing this way and just give me that little bit of edge there. Give me two big, nice highlights, and then give me some neg over here to suck up all of the light that would be returning from this key, depending on where you are. Now, sometimes you'll need a lot of neg, sometimes you won't need any neg. Depends, again, on a bunch of factors in the space. If you're in a tiny little area and there's a wall over here, you're definitely gonna wanna take that down because your key is going to shine against her and also miss, shine against the wall, and come back and fill all this in. And especially in an interview situation like this, where you are so able to control the environment, right? The shot is so small, you're only seeing, from sort of stomach up here, that you wanna be able, you have full control. You have the time to set it up, you might as well use it and make this thing look as good as you can. So just be aware of your surroundings when you are deciding, okay, well, do we need neg, do we not? What are we gonna do for the key? Where are we gonna position the person inside of here? If you are not going to use neg, just sometimes you don't even use neg for the contrast that it brings to the image. Sometimes it's just to get rid of a colored bounce. Like in here, see that red tint that is coming off of everything? If you're, I don't know, if you've got some sort of leak back there, or if this daylight somehow is shooting off of here and giving you some red spill, the skin tones start to look funky and it's just not a good look. So not even when in doubt, just all of the time, control everything that you can, because that is what you're getting paid to do, is to control the environment to make it look like you want to make it look, right? And the more control you have, the better you can do that. And the better you can do that, the better the stuff is going to look, and more people will ask you back, and pretty soon you're in the Bahamas, you're living the dream. The Rothschilds are calling. Okay, so this is a beautiful setup. One thing to know though, when you're doing anamorphic interviews, is you're going to have a wide eye line, especially on a lens this wide, right? This is a wide eye line with there's There's a lot of empty space over here, which is great if you want to put up graphics or something, or like they did, they put the little name tag down here. But it's a big, weird, it's a weirdly framed interview shot on Anamorphic. And the eye line only, I mean, it gets a little bit better as you go longer. You can come around a little bit, but it's always going to be a very wide eye line. Now, why is that? Because the frame is so wide, right? So if you have the person sitting just here, it's still, you know, you don't want the interviewer in the shot. And you don't want them parked behind the camera, or else this person, because they're not an actor, they start to freak out. You don't want any of that. So you put them in a natural, comfortable position, and this ends up being the eye line. So if you are thinking anamorphic for your interviews, just remember that this is a problem that you're gonna have to deal with. Either that, or you put some like little piece of tape on the matte box, just on the corner, so just here. But that's easy to do for a professionally trained actor. It's not easy to do for someone who is not, which is most of the world. So I think anamorphic interview is slightly more difficult. Now in here, what are we balancing to? Well, we don't really need to keep this stuff, but if you were going to want to keep it, this is what you would balance your key to, okay? In this situation, because these are so small, you would probably just be balancing to the room tone here, because it takes a lot of work to light up the room, right? It takes a lot of work. Why not just figure out, okay, this is the level that we want the room, right? Let's say this is, if we're shooting at 2.8, we want the room at 2s. Okay. Well, then now we know if we set on the lens, we set to 2.8, it comes out to 2s back here. Now we know exactly how much level we have to get from the key light. So we know if we're doing a tech scout, if we're looking at the location before we get the gear, we know, okay, what kind of lamp are we gonna have to bring in here? Are we gonna need a generator? Are we not gonna need a generator? What are we competing against? And then you work backwards from there. But I would say, use the solution that is going to involve the least amount of work, especially if you're working on something like this where you may not have some big giant crew. It's just you and a couple people. You're going to want to do yourselves favors and play to the room tone that you want. And then, because you can always key in this situation where there's only one person, the key is easy, right? You're never going to need that much level, right? This is probably like Sky Panel World or M18 if there's really a ton of level, and you're just softening it off here, negging here, and then if you want, you can add, you know, your little film school backlight here, where you just take it down this way, but just don't hit the nose. Or you can just use the neg to do that and open up this side of the neg. So the side that is furthest away from the talent. You're just gonna open that up, and that lets in that little bit of light. Okay, if we go to the guys now, where's his? There it is, right? Okay, now this is more like your talking head style interview. Again, really wide, and look at how wide the eye line is, right? Because you're gonna wanna park them, you wanna light them from upstage. You don't wanna put his face over here to get a tighter eye line this way, right? You still wanna have him looking across the frame. That's the way to do it. And then you light from this side. And this is the exact same lighting setup as before. Again, you don't really have to balance to out here because it's so small and so out of focus. You can let it go a little bit hot. You're just playing to the room tone up here. Key from the window that you can't see, right? The idea is that this light marries up with this stuff back here and makes it feel quite natural. Just like, oh, the barn has an open door and we just opened it up. You can see the eye lights there. We're just getting across here to the other side. And the way that you can do this, yeah, you set up the light, you have your stand-in, you know, your first AD, or whoever is sitting here helping you set up the lighting. You set them in there, and then you don't really move the key, especially if you've got a small crew. It's a pain in the ass. What you do is you just move the person who is doing the talking, right? Move them left or right, so you get that eye line to have this little tiny leak. And then here, much more so than the other one, you can see that we've got a much hotter edge over here. This thing is nice here just to separate the talent from the background. But again, you can do this with the light, or you can just open up the neg or pull the neg further away. But good looking interview stuff. If we come to the workout section, just reminded me to think of one thing here. Where is it? Okay, so, I mean, first of all, raise, I mean, that is a weird looking uplight here. I don't know if I would, that would be my first go-to. But this is, now we're in the frameworky world. And if we go full screen, come on, let's do it first time. Yes, we did it. If we are in the framework world, this is a beautiful looking image, right? We've got the rays in the background. We've got these little hotspots back here. We've got shooting into the depth, this is where the room join is back here. We've got cool stuff around. She's up close. We're shooting into the shadow as the light rakes over here. And there's not a whole lot of light coming over the top. But just the movement of the figure, you can make out what they're doing, right? They're just like getting ready for gymnastic rings in the barn here. Now you start to see where all of the level is coming from. Okay, this is hot, right? As in, it's very overexposed, those windows, but what else are you going to do? Your little behind moment. Now, this is a good way to see two different looks. Okay, we are shooting into the shadow here, right? So yes, we do have this giant blob out here, and you can tell if we're trying to expose for less blobbiness, the whole barn gets much darker. Whereas if you weren't to see that window, you could open up and have the barn like this level of lightness, right? Because now we don't see that hot spot, so we can open things up a little bit. But the difference here is now we're shooting into the light rather than into the shadow. So it creates much less mood, right? Shadow is mood. Same thing here, right? If you were shooting into the shadow, you would be over here on this side of the room, looking that way. So then you would obviously have to get her to turn if you wanted that to maintain that pose that we've looked at before. Again, here, shooting into the shadow. Now, this one you could easily fix, right? These hotspots. If you didn't like these and you had a decent size crew, as in you had another person and had planned for this, we remember those two windows that were up the top here? All you would have to do is take down that level by however much you needed to save this stuff. So say you had to come down 2 stops. Well, you could either use a net or, well, net's going to be the easiest, especially because it didn't look like there was actually windows there. Net or ND or, yeah, that's basically the ways to do it. Or you could expose your camera to hold these, right, by closing down 2 stops, but then you would have to add room tone. So you're looking for the easiest way to do it. But this is the perfect angle, again, shooting into the shadow like that. And then we come around and you see the benefits here. We just change her angle so you get a little bit of that. And this, you know, it's quite hot. It's distracting. It's really, really hot. So something to think about. All this other stuff, again, front light. I guess you just do it just to change angles to keep things interesting and keep it moving. But I would be trying to hose this whole scene down from, where is it? If this is the line of the room, I'd be trying to stand over here and point this way. So to orient, you know, you could flip it so she's facing this way, just trying to shoot into our opening in the barn, which is where all of our light is coming from. Anyway, good looking interview stuff and some interesting notes just on how to balance things and what to tackle first. If you have a small crew, do you go for big changes, little changes? What's the best workflow? And as you get better and the more jobs you go out on, you'll start to figure out, wait a sec, and I don't have 5 hours to light every scene because now I'm getting paid and people are out here and they want me to do this job really fast. So then you have to start coming up with a workflow of, okay, what goes first? What's the easiest? What do we balance to? What lights do we have at our disposal? All of those questions start coming in, and the more jobs you do, the better you get at deciding where to spend your energy. So that's going to do it. If you like this kind of stuff, be sure check out the Patreon link down below where we break down feature films in a much longer format over on Patreon each week. And many thanks for checking it out. We'll see you in the next one.